The governor and others are continuing to push for a transportation tax package. The last proposal would have increased fees and gas taxes by roughly $12 billion. Do you support a transportation tax package?
I do not support a transportation tax increase, gas tax increase, and there's a lot of reasons why. First and foremost, I believe we have to really implement some reforms in the Department of Transportation. And before there's any attempt to get additional tax revenue, we need to go the reform route first. And some of those key reforms that I've really sponsored and gotten behind down here in the legislature, reforming the permit process so that public transportation projects don't take as long, reforming the way that we do contracting, I think needs to be looked at. Also, we charge sales tax on state transportation projects. That adds enormous cost to public transportation projects. I think we need to revisit that policy. A couple bills that I co-sponsored. One would require DOT to not spend public transportation dollars on arts funding under the 1% for the arts that a lot of both state and local agencies have to allocate dollars. It raises the cost of projects. So I think we need to revisit that policy as well and discontinue it.
Your constituents may be hearing more and more about the state Supreme Court's second ruling in the McCleary decision. What are your thoughts about what the court is demanding?
I think that's kind of a two-part answer. You know, the McCleary decision came out. The finding was that the state was underfunding its K-12 system to the tune of anywhere from $3 to $4 billion. Last session, I think the legislature did phenomenal work with the majority coalition in the Senate to allocate an additional close to $1 billion to K-12 funding without raising taxes. And I think that was a significant, first step towards complying with the McCleary decision. A couple Fridays ago, the court issued a ruling questioning essentially our pace in complying with the McCleary decision. And I think there's a lot of questions about whether or not the court has the authority to do something as drastic as hold the legislature in contempt, which its ruling did indicate that as an option. But the court did say that there needs to be measurable progress towards complying with the McCleary decision. And I think that last session's $1 billion additional investment in K-12 was a first step, and it's only a first step, and there will be more work on education funding over the next several biennia to comply with McCleary by, I think, 2018. But ultimately, when the governor gave a State of the State speech, he raised the possibility of additional $220 million this supplemental budget year for education funding. I think the Senate Majority Coalition has said that that's a concern because it's not been budgeted. So we're going to have to wait and see whether or not there's going to be an additional investment this session in K-12 funding. But I want to emphasize that the McCleary also talked about reforms, and I believe that no amount of money is going to necessarily reform our school districts the way they need to be reformed. We're talking about things like making sure that we have high standards, making sure that we can have a merit system where teachers and principals are evaluated on the basis of merit, which I fully support. I also think that we need to revisit the notion of half-day school days. There's lots of concern that I'm hearing from parents that most districts now in the state have gone to at least one day a week that's a half day. I think we need to go back and look at that and revise that policy as well.
The legislature passed bills last fall to help our state's aerospace industry and bring the 777X jobs to Washington. What can be done to help smaller businesses and industries?
I think the 777 vote was key for the future of the state. Securing that 777 production line in Washington is absolutely critical for the state's economic development and economic improvement. I think we need to look at our L&I system, which adds enormous cost on employers. I think we need to look at our unemployment insurance system that also adds a lot of cost on employers. Raising the state's minimum wage is not the direction we want to go. I think there's lots of studies on both sides of that issue, but even the economist Paul Krugman has indicated that raising the minimum wage does lead to job loss, particularly in those areas of the economy, low-skilled entry-level jobs that we really want to expand so that we give folks the ability and the chance to get into the labor force and then through hard work advance up the economic ladder. So raising the state minimum wage is not the direction that we should go.